Welcome to the monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions about wrestling, life, hobbies, or whatever. This is a monthly video series that I do, so if you want to be part of next month's Q&A video, make sure that you're following me on X. I ask for your questions on there at least once a month. I typically get a lot of questions about my personal life and whatnot, but this time around it's almost all wrestling related. I think you're all still riding the high from WrestleMania 40, which understandably so, because that show was absolutely mind-blowing and I can't believe it actually happened. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know you're gonna fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. And I want to give a quick shout out to the Wrestling is Cool podcast. It's growing like crazy, so if you haven't given it a chance, do so. It's available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is that you like to listen to podcasts. So if you've got a long drive, a run, maybe you got a workout plan, just pop it on and see maybe if you enjoy it. It's a project I'm really proud of, so I'm just trying to tell the world about it. All right, let's read your questions. How long do you think Cody should be world champion for? I think that this is actually a really excellent question, but it's not as simple as just giving a certain amount of days, a certain amount of weeks or years, because I do think ultimately it's all about the right time. I can tell you right now that I don't want him to have a championship reign as long or a championship reign that surpasses Roman Reigns, because I do feel like Roman Reigns' run as world champion should be etched into the history books as the greatest championship run in the modern era of professional wrestling. It took 30 years to get a championship reign like that one, and it should take another 30 years. It shouldn't be immediately surpassed right after he loses it. That's my personal opinion. But when it comes to Cody Rhodes and how long he should hold this for, I think it should just be as long as the story dictates. Whenever it is the right time for him to lose it, whenever it's the right time for him to face adversity as a champion. We don't need year-long reigns to be able to tell those micro stories of championship struggles for Cody Rhodes. So if it makes sense for him to lose it at Backlash, I mean, I don't see how, but if the WWE can make it make sense, then I'm on board. Here's the thing. Right now, the WWE has so much grace right now with me and so many of the fans that I'm just gonna let them take us, as they keep saying, on this ride. So we'll see, but how long? I don't know, maybe at least SummerSlam. That's what I would like, but just whenever they want to do it and whenever it's time for him to lose it. Do you think Rey deserved to win at Mania after cheating to beat Dominic Mysterio? What a deadbeat. Absolutely disgusting maneuver by Rey Mysterio to hire two outsiders to come in and assault his own son. Put it into context like that. He hired people, two offensive linemen, to come and assault his own son. Disgusting. But here's the thing, like, character and Rey Mysterio's a deadbeat aside, I really think that Dominic and Santos should have won here. I don't know exactly what Rey Mysterio got out of winning. Frankly, I think the only reason that he won is because there was a celebrity involvement, not because of like their actual like direct involvement, but because the WWE likes to make sure that the celebrities are on the winning end of things that they get involved in the WWE. I feel like if the celebrities didn't get involved, then Dom and Santos should have clearly won. When do you think Tonga will show up on WWE TV? Been signed for a bit now, reportedly. Look, I think that the obvious answer is Raw after Mania, but that's already passed, or the SmackDown after WrestleMania, which I'm recording this before. But here's the thing, the WWE has not been the type of company to sign somebody and then immediately plaster them on television. They've taken their sweet time. Look at Jade Cargill. Yes, they did have her show up on backstage segments and walking through the parking lot, but it took a really, really long time for her to actually get properly involved in WWE TV. Carlito might actually be the most egregious example, where they had him signed for like 3.5 months and we were all expecting him to show up pretty much every single week of SmackDown, and it took forever for them to finally find the right time to put him on WWE TV. So I wouldn't be surprised if this takes longer than we anticipate, but I'm also not surprised if this happens as early as in a couple of hours on SmackDown. Where do you see wrestling peaking this era? Implying you don't think we have already peaked. I don't know how we could possibly surpass what we have already seen at WrestleMania 40. It's possible to say that that was the peak of the previous era, and this new era is going to eventually build up to some new peak. When do I think it's going to get there? I think it's going to be a couple of years. You have to remember, it took a couple of years to get to the peak of what we witnessed at WrestleMania 40. It was basically all the way from WrestleMania 36 all the way through to WrestleMania 40 to get to that crescendo of the Bloodline storyline. So I think it's going to be a while. If you were a wrestler, which wrestler from the current roster would you love to face in your debut match? I don't know. I think I've got a bit of a weird answer. Maybe like Omos. I don't know. I'd like to see what it's like to get chucked from being 7 feet up into the air. I want to lose. I want to get absolutely destroyed if I were to ever have some sort of exhibition match with a WWE superstar. I want to do my best to make them look like $1 million, do my best to sell my ass off for them. But I think like the experience of being next, because I'm a tall guy, I'm 6'2", being next to somebody that dwarfs me would be pretty cool. So I guess I'll go Omos, even though that's probably a very bizarre answer that you weren't expecting. With how stacked the WWE roster is, would adding a third main show or adding more titles be better? I don't think that the men's side of the main roster needs more titles. I think that there's already plenty of titles to vie for. I do think that the women on the main roster do need a mid-card title, just like how they're adding over in NXT with the NXT Women's North American Championship. I think it's a brilliant decision, and I think that they're going to pilot it down in NXT first before they move it over up to the main roster. And it also seems like they're turning NXT into more of a viable show as well. You gotta remember, CW is paying like $50 million a year to have NXT on their network, so I'm sure they're going to want to get a return on that investment, and that's probably going to involve bringing in a lot of established talent from the main roster to NXT to help bolster it as a third brand. All right, do you want even more wrestling content? Because I can give you more wrestling content right now over on Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZamp. You're going to get the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days earlier than everyone else. You're going to get the upcoming Friday night SmackDown review. You're going to get the Raw reviews and much more coming up. So go check it out. Over 800 people are already supporting myself over on Patreon to help keep this light on and keep this mic on. That's it. Thanks for listening to the Sella, but go check it out. Top link in the description or link in the pinned comment. Okay, back to the video. Would you like to see Zilla Fatu in the WWE? I do. Everything that I've seen from Zilla Fatu and his tag team with Jacob Fatu has been absolutely insane. They are incredibly talented. Zilla, especially with his age, still being in his mid-20s, is incredibly impressive. I do think that if he were to ever go to the WWE, that he would have a perfect place already in line for him, of course, no pun intended, in the bloodline or some sort of narrative involving that. But if they are interested in bringing in the next generation of the bloodline so that they could explore this storyline until the end of time with the WWE, then I think it's important for the WWE to bring in names like Zilla Fatu. Is there current AEW superstars that you think will come to the WWE within the next 2 years? And who are you picking and why? The first name that comes to mind as somebody that could realistically make that jump from AEW back to WWE is somebody like Malachi Black, aka formerly known as Aleister Black in the WWE. In the main roster with the WWE, he never really got to get going because he always had this start-stop push with the nature of his character under Vince McMahon. But I think under Triple H, he could really flourish. And over in AEW, he's been doing nothing but tag team stuff, being part of the House of Black, and I think that he would be a great single superstar in the WWE. The other name that comes to mind is somebody like Ricky Starks, who I think is highly underutilized in AEW and has a great relationship with somebody like Cody Rhodes, who is already at the top of the mountain in the WWE. So I could see him also realistically making the jump over. He's also very young as well and has a lot of time left in the prime of his career. What's your sleeper pick match from WrestleMania 40? I feel like everyone is talking about both main events, understandably so, but I want to see more love for the show as a whole. I think the sleeper match of WrestleMania 40 is Bayley versus Io Sky for the WWE Women's Championship. Objectively, that was an incredible match, an incredible match for that World Championship, a match that I think is going to go under the radar for a little while until the smoke starts to dissipate from how crazy that main event was. I think that with time, people are going to recognize that that match is going to be a cult classic and is going to get more recognition as time passes. What's one wrestling match in history you wish you were doing reactions online so people could have seen your reaction? I think it's probably unfair to just say this whole show, but WrestleMania 28, and if I had to pick up one particular match, it does have to be The Undertaker versus Triple H, Hell in a Cell, end of an era with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. That is one of my favorite matches of all time, and to this day, I still remember nearly shitting myself when The Undertaker got hit by the Sweet Chin Music into the pedigree and still managed to kick out. I would have loved to see my reaction on camera from that because it was that was to me still one of the craziest moments in professional wrestling history. When you first started making content, content, how did you always stay motivated in those early stages while seeing barely any views? Well, in the early stages, I didn't care about views. I was just caring about doing something cool online and trying to connect with wrestling fans any which way form that I could. So I was more focused on the actual process and enjoyment of the actual process of content creation, as opposed to reaching a mass audience that eventually came and was a byproduct. And it is an important thing to me now because this is what I do as a job. But ultimately, it always comes back to, am I having fun with what I'm doing? Because I know that if I'm having fun with what I'm doing, the content will translate and it will just naturally get views. What do you think Julia's rookie year in WWE will look like? I hope it looks something like Asuka's rookie year in NXT, where she went undefeated and destroyed everyone and went from NXT to the main roster as an undefeated monster. That's personally what I would like to see. I feel like it would be kind of a return to form to NXT Black and Gold as well, which we're kind of seeing here with how WWE would treat these major free agent signings within NXT. So that's personally what I'd like to see. Will the chair stream return? The chair stream was my favorite one of all year. For those that don't know, I streamed AEW Dynamite. Well, I didn't. Just my chair streamed AEW Dynamite, and it was the biggest AEW Dynamite watch party on the planet. My chair, without me, without saying a single word, my chair got more viewers than I probably would have watching AEW Dynamite. How come you don't do much AEW content? I would love to hear your thoughts on Revolution and their upcoming pay-per-views and feuds. I think that's a fair question. To clarify, I watch every AEW show. I watch Collision weekly and I watch Dynamite weekly so that I can stay up to date. The difference is that I don't always do it on stream and I don't always make content and reaction videos for those shows. Frankly, part of the reason is that, yeah, people sometimes ask me for AEW content, but when I make AEW content, like, nobody watches. So, I mean, I'd love to make more content if there was actual interest in it, but there doesn't seem to actually be any. On top of that, AEW is not friendly with content creators. They've taken videos down left, right, and center from myself to other colleagues simply for doing reactions or talking about things that they themselves have put out into the wild, like they did with the All In footage. So look, as a content creator, I don't want to put myself in the firing line for the sake of doing content for AEW when they clearly see no value in content creators making content about them like the WWE does. So yeah, it's a couple of reasons. It's partly me, it's partly you, because a lot of you don't watch the AEW content that I've done in the past, and it's mostly AEW, who's very unfriendly to content creators. What if the streak ended in a cash-in instead? I'm not gonna read the rest of this stuff. No, what? No. And at the end, you put the people would be pissed off in a good way? No, they wouldn't. People would be super pissed off in the worst possible kind of ways. It would have been the most WCW way to end one of the most iconic, legendary stretches of professional wrestling ever. Absolutely not. With the state of things being what they are in AEW, how much longer do you think Tony Khan has until the company takes a swanton into obscurity? Never, probably. I don't think people realize how much money the Khans actually have. These are proper billionaires that could infuse this company with cash for as long as they damn well please if they want to. I think it's really going to be a matter of until Tony Khan gets bored with doing what he's doing. So how long do I give AEW? I don't know. It's as long as the pocketbooks want to continue to infuse cash into this organization. And so long as there's cash, there's going to be an influx of major free agents like they just had with Mercedes Moné, Will Ospreay, and of course Okada. So the pockets are there. And if the pockets are there, AEW, the wheel's going to continue to keep churning. Will it churn good content? I don't know, man. It's been struggling lately. It hasn't been as good as it was in the heights of 2021, but you know, things can change. WWE was garbage and terrible for the better part of like an entire decade. So I'm not overall too concerned if AEW is having a bad stretch here, you know, a couple bad months, maybe a bad year or two, because I've seen these ebbs and flows in the world of professional wrestling, and I've seen the WWE go through their worst of times and are now currently in their best of times. Do you believe that WWE needs to book Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns in a singles match at WrestleMania 40? For an entire generation, that is the absolute dream match and would feed families. Should book this match before they are past their prime. Yes, I don't know if it has to be WrestleMania 42, but it needs to happen at some point, and like you said, before they're fully past their primes. I don't want Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins to be another one of those what ifs at WrestleMania that we never got, like John Cena versus Randy Orton, like John Cena versus Edge at WrestleMania. Those singles matches that we deserve but never ultimately properly got. Yes, we got the feuds outside of WrestleMania, but those are iconic generational feuds that should have had a major blow off in their story points at WrestleMania. And I hope that we do that at some point with Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns, because this is one of the most iconic duologies in wrestling wrestling narratives in the history of this sport. What's a storyline you're excited for and want to happen this year? It's an obvious one, but I've always, in movies and books, I really like the story of the fallen king coming to reclaim what was his. And I think that's what we're eventually going to get with Roman Reigns trying to reclaim the throne, trying to reclaim the title of tribal chief, trying to reclaim the title. And I'm really excited to see what that eventually is going to look like. As simple as it sounds, what do you like to do with your friends? Could be involving wrestling or not. Oh, my friends would never entertain the idea of wrestling. It's partly why I started to do what I do here, because no one in my immediate circle gives two single shits about professional wrestling. In fact, if I bring it up, I would just get roasted by my friends, which is why I tossed out this message in a bottle into the ocean, trying to find other wrestling fans online, and here we are. But with my friends, it would just be casual stuff, movies, board games, going out for some drinks, bonfires, nothing too crazy. What are your expectations for Bash in Berlin? Gunther, Ilya Dragunov. That's it. That's the expectation. That is the match that needs to happen at Bash in Berlin. It's too perfect. It's like the greatest perfect storm that you can conceivably make for this show. Gunther, Ilya Dragunov, please. What's your favorite WrestleMania match of all time? Dog, honestly, it might be recency bias, but it might be this main event between Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. It just had so much earned fan service. I hate fan servicey things in general when it just feels random for the sake of a cheap pop. Every single ounce of fan service that happened in this match felt earned. It felt like it was the culmination of a 3-year storyline where all of these crazy surprises were warranted. However, I'm still very partial to Triple H versus The Undertaker, Hell in a Cell, End of an Era, Shawn Michaels special guest referee. It might be between those two. I think it might be best to ask this question in a couple of months though. Who's a wrestler that everyone hates but you love? I loved the Maximum Male Models. I don't know what they got so much hate online saying it was a stupid gimmick. Look, it was a ridiculous gimmick, but they did everything in their power to make it work. And every single time that they were on screen, I was usually gut busting laughing at the ridiculous shenanigans that they got involved in. Dream match between one deceased wrestler and one active wrestler. I mean, the answer is Eddie Guerrero versus literally anyone, but I guess I'll go Eddie Guerrero versus Seth Rollins. I think that thing would be an absolute dream match. Honestly, it'd probably be too dangerous of a match. It would probably melt all of our eyeballs. What was the best match of Roman's championship reign? I am gonna go with the finale. Again, ton of fan service, but when you remove the fan service and you look at what they actually did in the ring, by itself, it was a 5-star match in my opinion. Those guys absolutely tore the house down. Honestly, they just got like 10 cherries on top with all of the craziness that happened at the end, but in its own right, it was already an incredible match. All right, folks, thanks so much for sending in your questions. Again, make sure you're ready to submit your questions next month by following me on X. That's it. I'm done. Get out of here.